So we're going to be starting with our next tutorial on Adobe Illustrator today. Today we're going to be making a different shaped space. So if you can go ahead and create a new document, and this time in inches, I want you to set it up as a 9 by 9 inch document. So just put in the 9 and the 9 here and hit create at 300 dots per inch. And what you will see is a little square here. And we're going to go ahead and go into the layers palette. Remember, if the windows are different, you can always set them up with, I'm going to reset my 4 layout, but you'll want to find the layers palette. And we're going to go ahead and use layer 1 as the place that we put our transparency or our overlay here. So we're going to go to File, Place, and we're going to find the sheet that we downloaded for the logo exercise logo number 1 JPEG. And we're just going to go ahead and place that into the space here. And just like before, we're going to create a new layer, layer 2, put it on top of layer 1, and then we're going to lock layer 1. And in fact, before we lock layer 1, I'm just going to unlock layer 1, click back on this. I'm going to go to the, let me go into my Windows workspace. Let's see, I should have my properties open. But if not, you can always get to your properties. Come on, open up, you little properties. Why is that not opening? Whatever. Okay, I'm going to go back into my properties window, and I'm going to actually take the opacity and drag it down a little bit so that these icons are like at 50% transparency. Then I'm going to go ahead and go back to my layers and lock the layer. Go to layer 2, and now we're ready to start. We're going to be starting in the upper left-hand corner and working our way through these designs. So let's go ahead. I'm going to hit Command ++ and the Pan tool to get me to this first icon that we're going to be using the Shapebuilder tool to create. Now, you can kind of see what we're going to be doing is trying to emulate this icon. And we're going to be using our basic shapes, but we're going to learn a couple new tricks, and these tricks are going to be very important throughout the rest of the semester. So first thing we see is we can see that this is made up of just squares, rectangles, and other shapes. So let's go ahead and just start actually creating those shapes in the space so that we can see how they work. So the first shape I see is just a regular rectangle, and you can kind of see if I hold the Shift key down while creating it, I would be creating this rectangle, right? Now you'll notice that the rectangle, I can't see through it because the fill is in fact not transparent. So we're going to make the fill transparent. And you can see, I'm going to change my window view workspace back to layout or reset layout. There we go. Actually, I want window workspace 4.1. And there's my properties palette again. I definitely like having this up because I use it a lot. And you see that my stroke is set to 1. We see that we can actually pull in the outside just like we had done in the past until it pretty much corresponds with what we have. And then we see we're going to need another square inside of that. So again, going back to the rectangle tool, I'm just going to click hold. And with the space bar held down, that allows me to move this. I haven't let go of the Shift key or the mouse button, but it allows me to move it and recenter it and get this to exactly line up, and that's pretty perfect. I'm going to pull this top down so that it actually corresponds with this, and then I'm going to pull this in. Now if I pull this in, it's going to pull the top, so remember, double clicking the corner pulls it in. I'm looking at the number. I'm going to pull it in. Okay, it says 11, so I'm going to pull this one in until it says 11 as well. So I'm kind of keeping track of this. So far, so good. I'm going to go to my Ellipse Tool, and it looks like I've got 2 ellipses. So the first one, again, spacebar. And I'm not sure if this is a perfect circle, but it does look like one. So spacebar allows me to get this just perfectly lined up. And then a second circle inside of the first, again, holding the spacebar. So I've got 2 fingers, one on the Shift key, one on the spacebar key, and I'm just kind of getting these things to align. And then finally, an ellipse is not what I want. It is a rectangle tool with slight corners modified, and that pretty much is the shape. Now let's take a look at this. We can see that this rectangle here has slightly rounded corners, so we're going to just go ahead and do that. Now, how does one actually turn all these separate shapes into one single shape? And so the way we're going to do it is we're going to use the Pathfinder tool. And so the way this works is you go back to the selection tool and you select everything that you would like to group together permanently. Like in essence, we are gluing and fusing all this together. So I've selected everything. Now I want to remove these things and I want to add all these things together so that it's one solid shape. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to select this little Shapebuilder tool right here. So it's not the Pathfinder, I said wrong, but it is actually replacing the Pathfinder tool that we used to use. So you click on this, and the way that this works, you can see if I hover, I'm just going to zoom in so you can see, if I hover over a space, it actually has the plus button. So if I were to click, hover, and pull across or drag across objects and let go, you can see that now this has become one single object, right? So it has by default, just clicking and pulling creates one single object. Now, accidentally, you could do that and then delete things. So be careful. I'm undoing that. Now, to remove something, you hold the Option key down, and you notice how the cursor changes to a minus, and then you click on the thing you want to remove. Because remember, this is still there, and you want it to be an empty space. So I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove that. And in essence now, if I go back to my selection tool and I flip the stroke to fill, I now have a solid, perfectly created icon that is the Instagram icon. So let's continue practicing with that so we can kind of see how that would work here as well. You'll see that this circle and this square will overlap, and then we'll have a circle and a square on the inside. I'm going to do something different here. We're going to use a different tool beside the Shapebuilder tool. We're going to actually create the stroke using just our regular stroke element, and then we're going to actually expand that. So I'm going to go to the Ellipse tool, and I'm going to create two ellipses. One here that's going to actually just kind of center off in that circle. I'm going to switch the stroke to fill. I'm going to go to my properties and I'm going to increase the stroke width until it's about exactly right. And it says here 9 points. So if this is 9 points, what I'm going to do is also select the rectangle tool. And you notice how things kind of want to snap automatically. And I'm going to hit the Shift key down to make a perfect square. And let go. And now we have a square that with the stroke of exactly 9 points because it remembers the previous stroke. Now here's the deal. I'm going to center align both these. So I'm going to select both of these guys and I'm going to center align them like that. So now that they're perfectly centered, right? And you can kind of see this overlaps with this, and I don't see a bump, so it looks pretty perfect. Now how do I turn this? Because this right now is just a single line. And if I switch it, you see it's now a fill. But I want this to be the fill, right? So I'm going to undo that. So here's how you do it. You select the objects that you want to expand and turn into an actual shape, like I just did. Then you go up to Object, Expand. This is really important. You'll be using this a lot. So Object, Expand. And then you turn that line. Now you can see that this actually has an inside and an outside path, and you can see that these paths overlap. So that's how you do that. Let's go ahead and add a square to the center here. And let's add a circle to the center here. And then there'll be one more thing that we'll need to do, right? We're going to actually, now we could do a little bit better job of aligning these, so you can go to the Align tool and center and this, and then scooch it over. And the same with the square. You can center it this way, and now we know that these guys are perfectly aligned, right? But remember, we still need to fix this area. This needs to be one solid outline, and the way we do it, we go back to our Shapebuilder tool, and then we just, without touching anything, we just click, drag, and you can see that has now made this a solid shape. Now we're going to remove the interior shape using the same technique. We're going to hold the Option key, and now that removes that shape, and it removes this shape from the fill. Oops. There we go. And now we've got our object, and you can see this is one part. So in order for this to be one complete object, we're going to select everything and we're going to group it like we did in the past with Command G or group. And now when we move it, it moves as a single block or a single unit. So how would we go about doing something like this? Well, if you have the Shapebuilder and you have that in your mind, you probably think to yourself, this is a pretty straightforward thing. It looks like it just has some lines, and then we remove like circles and then maybe round some of the corners. And this we can add something in as well. So let's give it a try. Let's actually, for this one, perhaps start with a pen tool. And we're just going to start with the pen tool here, and we're going to click here. Oop, I got the wrong tool. So let me undo that. Pen tool is the third one down. It's not the Curvature Tool, which we will be going over. So clicking here, kind of seeing how it goes to the center here, goes here, goes straight down, and then finally we finish the shape. So we have this shape. I'm going to swap it so that we see the stroke, and we can kind of see that's almost perfect. Now what are we going to do? Well, we know that this shape is a solid shape, so we need to actually cut a couple lines out here. So let's just start with a single line segment, and then we're just going to actually put it right in the center here. I don't care if it's bigger or smaller because we're going to expand this, right? And then now we're going to go to our strokes, and we're going to increase the stroke until it looks like 7 points is the stroke that I need. So I'm going to take that line, put it wherever it needs to be, and then I'm going to duplicate the line. Remember, Option drag allows me to duplicate it. I'm going to rotate it using the Shift key so that I'm holding the Shift key down, and then I'm going to put this right in the center. So the idea is it should be perfectly centered to this area right there. So let's see if we can get that to be perfectly centered. So that's telling me that's the center. Even though I can see different things on the background, I know it's going to be good. And then finally, the last shape that we need is the Ellipse Tool, a perfect circle, right? And we'll just get that to fit in as perfectly as possible. Looks like that's going to work. And remember, we'll just swap this out so that it's now a shape, or at least so that we can see it. So now, all these objects we're going to need to use the Pathfinder tool for in order to delete certain elements, right? So the way it works, you select everything you want to work with on the Pathfinder tool by selecting it. Then we go to the Shapebuilder tool, sorry. And then we're going to remove this, holding the Option key down. I'm just going to drag. We're going to remove. Now, notice that if we remove this, we have not done one thing. This is still a line. It's not a solid shape. So if I were to hit the Option key and try to remove it, you'll see it doesn't remove the actual fat block. It just removes a line. So before I get started, I forgot to do this, click here and also click this one. And we're selecting both of these, and we're going to go to Edit, or I'm sorry, Object, Expand, and that will then turn that into a solid block, like a rectangle, and this becomes a rectangle as well. You could have used the Rectangle tool, but again, this gives you a little bit of control about how big it's going to be so you can play around with it without playing too much. Now if we select everything, Shapebuilder tool, and now I can delete this, holding the Option key down, remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that. And you can see there's a little thing here that I can go ahead and zoom in on and remove. And now, if I zoom out, Command 0, and then even here. Now if I invert this, select it first, of course, then invert that, there's the shape, and you'll notice it's not grouped yet, so we select everything, and Command G to group it, and boom, voila, there's our icon. And that's it. So Shapebuilder tool is really great, and so is that expansion of the line width. So you can kind of see what we're going to be doing here. A couple ways to approach doing this. I can start with just my line tool, right? And I can start anywhere and just kind of go, oops, sorry. I'm holding the Shift key down to get a perfect line. Notice by default there's no stroke, so I'm going to click my stroke here and turn it into something like a black stroke here. So let's see. black. There we go. Hit OK. Still not black. Don't understand why. I'll just go to the Properties tab, by the way, and we're going to increase that stroke width until it's about the right size, and I'm just going to move it to the center of this just so I can see a little better. Looks like this is about the right size, and that's 12. So we're looking for a stroke width of 12. So I'm just going to put this one here, and I'm going to copy it, Command C, and then Command V, rotate it straight up and down, and that one goes right there. Just scooch it down a little bit. And then finally, I'm going to Command C, Command V, and I'm going to shift rotate so that's perfectly 45. And this is exactly where it intersects, so that's kind of nice. And then finally, for the outline here, 12 points, we're going to use a circle, right? An ellipse. So it's a perfect circle. And again, I'll try to be on the inside there, so that's good. And then finally, we're going to be cutting away. You can kind of see, I'm going to well, first off, before we do anything, let's expand all these shapes, right? So we're going to go here, we're going to go to Object, Expand, and hit OK. And now we see how all those shapes are expanded. I'm going to take this shape and just snap it to here so that I have a line that we can, as you can kind of see, it'll snap right to this line and this line as well. So now we're going to probably use our Shapebuilder tool, but we have one more thing that we'd like to do. We need a shape that will allow us to cut this area out. So I'm going to invert, or I'm going to change the stroke to something like this so I can see what I'm doing. And what we're going to want to do is have a rectangle, which would probably be the easiest thing, that actually goes across like this. So we're going to be using that rectangle to cut all these lines and pieces off. Okay, we're ready to go. So I'm going to select everything first. Remember how the Shapebuilder works. Click on the Shapebuilder tool, and notice that here we should have brought this in. So I'm going to go back one more time and bring this into where it actually stops. Okay, now go back to our selection and Shapebuilder, and I'm going to remove all this, holding the Option key down. I'm just going to drag all this stuff away. Great. Drag this away. We don't want that. Now all this stuff we want, so I'm going to let go of the Option key and just drag across. As you can kind of see, I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to drag across these two, and lo and behold, there is our completed shape. We're going to swap the stroke with fill, so I'm going to go back to selecting and swap, and there is our item. So hopefully this is starting to make sense to you. And I have a feeling you probably realize how this one's going to work as well. Now, this one we're going to be using something different, but let's think about how we're going to do this. It's probably a circle and then a line, right? So let's start with the line so we get a sense of like how big this needs to be. I'm going to just hold the Shift key down and make a perfectly straight line. In my Properties panel, I'm going to double click that stroke and just hit black. And then I'm going to expand it till it's the stroke width I want, which is about 22. Now, do you notice the end caps here? Remember how we fixed that last time? We went to the Strokes panel, and then we went to the end cap and we made them round. And we're going to round the end caps for this piece. So the Properties, 22 is our stroke width, and we have rounded end caps. So let's now make a circle. Perfect circle, and again, just going to center that so that it's pretty perfect, and I'm going to try to line it up so everything is centered here. Boom. Now to make sure everything is perfectly lined up, we're just going to select both, and we're going to go to the Align, and I'm just going to center them here. I'm not going to center them up and down or I'd get this, but centering them left and right, that's what I want to do. Now I'm going to select both of these, and we're going to go to, Object, Expand. And we're going to just expand that. Now you can see how each of these objects is now an actual shape. And in order to see what I'm doing, I'm going to just swap this out. Now what I'd like to do is have this cut here and this cut here. So there's a couple things that we can do. We could obviously just make a line here and make a line here, and then we could use that to cut stuff. Or we could just actually, easiest thing I think, is we can add a little circle in here, right? There it is. And you can see how it wants to become that. And then I can hold the shift key down and add another circle here. I'm holding the space bar to move it. There we go. And the idea is this shape plus this shape will go together. So let's zoom out a little bit. Go to our Shapebuilder tool, which we first need to select everything we want to work with. Then Shapebuilder. And now we're just going to drag here. Oop. I'm going to remove this first. Command minus. Oh, something got... Oh, because I forgot to actually cut the outer donut here. So let's go ahead and do that. I did add the shape in, but I forgot to add a cut to this donut. So I'm going to go ahead and let's say I'm going to just use the pen tool because that's just like the easiest thing. I'm going to go here and then cut to here. I'm going to go here and then I'm going to just cut here. Just going to use this as something to create a shape. So that was just my pen tool, very straightforward and easy. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and then I'm going to select everything and now Shapebuilder, and I'm going to select this one and this one, this one and this one, and this one, this one. And then I'm going to select this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then everything else I want to get rid of, right? So Option, drag, Option, drag. And lo and behold, I'm going to go back there. And there it is. Now, obviously, I have a little mistake here. And also, it's kind of like goofy here. So if I wanted to, I'm going to just select this guy and then go into my direct selection tool and then take a look at what's going on here. And I can kind of see that I have too many anchor points here. So remember, if I hit the minus button, I can get rid of that. Right, and then that gets rid of that extra point, and so now all I have to do is like adjust some of these. Go back to the direct selection, zoom out a little bit, and then just kind of like tweak this so that it's the way I want it to be. And the same thing here, I just extend this out until it looks pretty good. And the same thing up here. I've got these extra weird paths and points, right? I can actually use the Shapebuilder tool and then just kind of like add that to the entire shape. So as long as I've got everything selected, so start by selecting all this guy and then go back here to this little tiny boo-boo and Shapebuilder, and then just kind of select this together like this. And then it is now one single thing. If I wanted to remove that point, hit the minus button and just get rid of that guy. And now we're zoomed out and it looks pretty good, right? A little wonky, but not too off target. Obviously, we could have been a little more accurate. Select, just deselect everything here, select both of these guys and turn it into an actual shape. And there it is, right? And then remember to group it. Command G is a direct way to group it. So now that's done. So we're on to our ABC or CBS television logo, and it's pretty simple. We've got two circles, right? We can even make those right away. Now the next tool I'm going to show you is pretty cool. It's called the Width tool, and the way it works, I just might as well just show it to you. Say for instance we're using the pen tool and we just create a straight line with the pen tool, like I'm just going to show you how this works like that, and I'm going to hit the escape button and I'm going to swap it so that we have a stroke so you can kind of see the stroke. And the way the Width tool works, and it's right here under the eyedropper tool, is if you click it and you've selected something, you can actually click on the path and pull, and it will actually create a stroke on the path. So you can actually construct or sculpt or whatever, anything you want that's more complex using this Width tool. These things can be manipulated afterwards, you see. You can click the outside to like change not only location here, but also change the actual width of the thing. So you can create all kinds of cool stuff. So that's kind of a really interesting thing, is we know that after we find a perfect shape and we like it, we can then go to the object expand and we will get all our points. Now, one second thing that you should do after you do an expand on something with the Width tool, notice how many hundreds of dots there are here. That means all these anchor points are almost unnecessary, and it will be impossible to modify this shape using the direct selection tool. You'll see, because it's like each of these is a little anchor point, and it's just too complicated. So there is one more thing that you need to learn after you use the width tool, is always go to Object, Path, and then what we want to do is simplify the path. And what you'll get is this dialog that opens up, and if you pull down on the path simplification, first I've got to select the path here. So I'm going to select the shape, go to Object, Path, Simplify, and you'll notice that it can actually simplify it to a point where it's no longer a good shape, but you can get something that looks pretty good. And now it says it only has 10 points, right? And I'm going to hit OK or click away. And now if you select it, you'll notice now this entire shape is made of only 10 points. Maybe 10 might have been a little too few, but that's one of the things that you'll want to do after you use the expand, and then for the width tool, you might want to simplify things. So let's give this a try. I'm just going to take this shape that we just made and delete it. And think about it, like we want to make this shape, and this shape looks just like the straight line with a single line that goes through the middle here. Command R, by the way, brings up these rulers. I think we did this in our last thing. And I'm going to pull out something from the ruler so that I have a center point to work with. So this will be my center. It's pretty close. These are guides, and we can delete the guides after we're done. So let's start with a circle, holding the Shift key down. And I'm just going to make this circle till it looks about right. That's about the right shape. So now I'm going to hold the space bar until it's like centered. Pretty good. I'm going to make the outer circle till it's about the right shape. Again, holding the Shift key down. That looks pretty good. And now I've got two circles. By the way, notice both circles disappear as soon as I click away from them. That's because I'm going to undo the hold. I'm going to Shift select the grid so they're not selected. That's because we have no stroke on either one of those circles. So I'm going to just go to Properties and click on the stroke and make it black so that I can see what I'm doing. Now, before we start, let's go ahead and align these circles. So I'm going to select both of them, go to the Align, and then just center them perfectly up and down, left and right. So now they're perfectly centered. I'm going to group them, Command G. This way, when I move one, they move both. And then I'm just going to make sure that both of them are intersecting at the center here, which I just did because it snapped. Now let's make a line. Or we could use the pen tool, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. And so I'm going to start on this guide, and I'm not going to pull. I'm just going to click and then click again. And I'm going to hit Escape. Now, I can go ahead and get this line to be perfect. So I'm going to use my direct selection. I'm going to just select that. I'm just going to pull that guy out. So that's perfect. And that's pretty perfect, even though the background shape is a little off. It's perfectly centered the way we want it. So now we're going to use our width tool from the center on that line, and I'm going to pull it open. So select the line first. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool and select that line, not the guide, so just the line. So again, if you select too many things, in fact, we don't really need this guide anymore. We need the top one, but not this one. So if you want to select the guide and just hit delete, that gets rid of the guide. So we select this line, go to our width tool, and then we're going to click in the center and pull until we get exactly what we want, right? So this looks like perfect selection. It's about the right shape because we've pulled it with our width tool. We can always change it or modify it, make it bigger. I'm going to swap it so that the stroke is visible. Let's see. We can't do that, right? Because this is not a real shape, right? This when we pull it, it's still a straight line. So what do we have to do? Have to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and notice how many objects there are, how many anchor points there are. Too many, actually. So we're going to go one more time to Path and Simplify. And notice that it actually can make this path with just 4 points, right? So that's kind of cool. So we're done. Click away. And if we looked at this shape, you see how many points there are. There's just 4. And they seem to be right at the ends, right here, which is because we didn't make our original stroke that small, which is not a good sign. But anyway, so Let's go ahead and swap this, turn this into an outline so that we can see what we're doing. And then I'm going to center everything like this. Oop, maybe not. I'm going to use a direct, I was using the direct selection tool. Center it like this, center it up and down. And then now finally our Shapebuilder tool, right? Because we want this white not to be white. We want it to be invisible or removed. So go to Shapebuilder after selecting everything. Boop. And hit the Option key or on the keyboard to remove the inside here. And we've done that. And now when we select this entire thing and change it to a fill, remove this guide so that it's there, and there it is. We've got it. I don't know what this is doing here. I'm just going to delete it. Seems like extra. There we are. Okay, 3 more shapes for this tutorial. I hope it's not running too long. But you can kind of see on this one and on this one and on this one, all 3 have a very similar setup. But I'm going to think about this one. So if I could just do one shape, then all I'd have to do is rotate this shape over and over for five times to create this this object. So let's think about this object shape, right? It just looks like a circle, and it looks like it goes to a point. So I'm going to just start by creating a guide so that I have a nice center point, and creating a circle or an ellipse that happens to be a perfect circle that kind of actually matches that. And so now it's centered on that guide. Then I'm going to do is use the pen tool, and I'm just going to start here at the base. And before we start, it looks like my circle has, again, I'm going to undo, has no width. So I'm going to go ahead and go to properties, or has no stroke. Now I can see it, so if I click away from it, it'd be nice to actually see what's going on. So I'm going to go to my pen tool, and I'm going to start down here on the guide. I know it's like right in the center of the object here. And I'm just going to go to like some place on the circle. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Like right there, right? And then I'm going to go across, and I'm going to hold the Shift key down so that it's a perfectly straight line. And then I'm going to finish the shape up. You can kind of see by going to that last dot down here, and now I've made this triangle and the circle. And so both of those together, once I use the Shapebuilder tool, right? I'm going to take both of these, put them together, go to the Shapebuilder tool, and just turn all this into one single object. And you can see that this is pretty good. If we wanted to make these bow out a little bit, you could use the Curvature Tool, which we've used in the last lesson. And you could just physically, and I'll show you how to do it, you could just physically click and just pull to bow them out just a bit. The Curvature Tool, if you remember, allows you to create like curves on a stroke that exists. So the Curvature Tool we'll be using in the future as well. There's a little annoying like dip here, and by removing this point, I bet that would remove that dip. And so I'm going to hit the minus button and just remove that point and this point. And so now if we zoom out, it looks like exactly what we need. Now we just need to do this 5 times. So how are we going to do that? Well, there's a new tool that we're going to be using. It's called the Rotate tool. It's right here under the letter T. And the way that it's going to work is that when you select an object, so I'm going to select this object here, and then select the Rotate tool, you notice how you have this little anchor here. Now, if you wanted to, you could just start rotating it, but you can see this is not what we are going to want to do. We're going to actually want to rotate it to here, and that means we need to take this point that it rotates around and put it down here. So the way you do that is you just hold the Option key down, drag that point to where you want it to be down here, and then let go. And when you do that, you're going to get this dialog. Now this is the nice dialog, and this is going to save you a lot of work in the future if you could use it. Now I know I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what's the math that I need to rotate? What angle do I need? Well, you can let Illustrator figure it out, because you want to just do 360, which is a circle, divided by 5. And that's going to actually move it, you can see by the preview, move it over to where it needs to be. But you don't want to actually just do that. You don't want to move it. You want to copy it. So hit the copy button. Now you've got 2 done. Now you do this again and again and again. Now there's a keyboard shortcut that allows you to do the last thing again. That's Command D, or where is it located? Oh, I don't know where the transform again. So Command D, or you can try to remember where that's going to be. But Command D, and Command D. And as you can see, I have now rotated that, and it made perfectly 5 perfect pieces. I'm going to select all of them. Let's remove the guide. Don't need it anymore. Select all of them, group them, and then change it to something like that. So you can kind of get the idea of how that would work for this. It's almost identical. In fact, if you want to go into this group, double click, copy this, Command C, and then double click to get out of the group. Remember how this works? We're in the group here, and then double clicking or going to this arrow here brings us out. And now because we copied this, we could use it here, Command V, and now I can rotate it, and you can kind of see. And I rotate it again, and then change the size of it. Holding the Shift key down changes it proportionally, and you get the idea here. I have a feeling you know how to do this one already. So since this is similar to this, I'm going to just copy it and paste it, rotate it, and make it smaller, holding the Shift key down for proportional changing. Shift key is held down. Okay, and that looks about right. And then finally, we're going to be linking these two things together. Now you could use just a regular line. So for instance, I could just click here and then go Shift, hit Escape. And then we know that all we need to do is change the stroke. So I'm going to make the stroke 1. And then in my Properties panel, I can see that that will be 5. 5 points is what we're looking for. You can kind of see maybe 4 points actually, just from the look of it. So let's zoom in and let's get this looking correct. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and expand this so we know how to do that. Expand. Hit OK. And now it's expanded because it was selected. And I'm going to copy this because this is exactly the same width that I want here. So I'm just going to Option drag it so that it's available to me. I'm going to take it here. Now a couple things you could do. You could use the Rotate tool, right? You could bring this down, hold the Option key, and then at this point, because the Option key is held down and you've got it kind of rotating around this axis, if you were to rotate this here, you can kind of see how this helps you a little bit because it gives you where the axis of rotation is going to be. And then all I need to do is go up here with the Direct Select tool and select this anchor point and hold the Shift key down to select this, and then just actually pull it up. And then get it to perfectly kind of do something like that, right? So we've got everything good on this side as well. We can kind of see how that's working. And so let's zoom out, and here's our shape. It's not done yet because what do we still need to do? We still need to select this entire shape. I'm going to use the Direct Selection tool here, or the regular selection tool, and we have to create one single shape. So go to our Shapebuilder tool. And without pressing anything except holding down the mouse, I'm just going to carefully select everything just like that. And then I'm going to look to make sure that all my selections are good. You could like hit the minus button if you want to reduce some of these points that are not necessary. Again, less points are always better. But for the most part, everything looks really good, right? You can see that maybe I don't want this. And I don't want this one because it looked like a really sharp. So I can remove that, and I can remove that. And that looks pretty much like what we wanted. Select the V tool, and you can kind of see that's it. One last thing, obviously we forgot, is the Ellipse tool. Make that circle. That's about the right shape. I'll just put this guy on top of this. Select both, and then use my Shapebuilder tool and hold the Option key down to remove that hole right there. And there we go. And then the last shape is going to be a multiple construction. Let's take a look at what we're doing here. Now think about this. This drop is a little more intricate than just a circle and a pen tool. It's harder to get that symmetry. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use that width tool with the straight line. So take a look. I'm going to use my pen tool. I'm just going to put it in the middle here and just click and then hold the shift key down and click here. Hit the escape key and then make sure that my stroke is like 1 or whatever. Actually, I'm going to even bring the stroke down to 0.5 so that it's really small. And then I'm just going to scooch this guy over so that it's kind of like exactly where I want it to be. So I'm going to go to my, or just the letter V tool. Now what I want to do is I want to expand the width of this. So we're going to go to our width tool, right? And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click and pull all the way open like this, right? And then here, we're going to get it to kind of shrink in maybe. So maybe it's something like this. Let's move that up. So that's about like that. So it's kind of like what we're trying to do is create this like, I'm just modifying it. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to swap. So you can, oops, I'm going to undo that. So you can kind of see that's almost perfect. Now, what about this bottom part, right? How are we going to do that? Well, this is the cool part. This is still a line, and the line still has an end cap. And the cap here is missing. It's a straight, right? So if we went to stroke, and we actually added a rounded end cap, watch what happens. Bam. So this has now a rounded end cap. It's still a line. So we still have to expand it, but you can kind of see how this works. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to go ahead and expand it. We know how to do that. Object, expand appearance. And you notice that I've got all these dots. They look pretty symmetrical, but we can simplify that. So I've got object, path, simplify. And we're going to take a look, and maybe 3 points is too little. So let's maybe make it 6 points, 7 points. That looks pretty good. We are now going to think about this next part. We're just going to go to my regular selection tool. We want an outline of this that'll cut through this circle thing. So if we made a big circle here, we would still need this outline to actually cut through. So there's a couple ways you could do that. I'm going to actually use this shape to create the outline. So I'm going to duplicate this by option dragging it. And then I'm going to swap this to an outline here. And you can see if I were to increase the width of that stroke right there looks a little bit like that shape. And I know that it's perfectly shaped wise, but it's unfortunately cutting in and out of the thing. So for instance, if I change the stroke color, you'd see that it's actually cutting into the shape as well as out. But we can fix that in the stroke area. So you'll notice that the stroke aligns currently to the center of that line that we made. But we can actually have it be on the inside of the shape. You can kind of see it's on the inside, on the stroke itself, or on the outside. And we want it on the outside. So you can kind of see what you can do, see how it kind of curves around here. But this shape, once we expand it, we could use it to cut away from this shape, which will just be a circle and a line. So I like what I've got here. I'm going to go to Object, Expand Appearance, right? And then finally, Object, Simplify, wherever that is, Shape, Path, Simplify, and we're just going to increase it to 14 points. Does look perfect, so we're going to leave it there. So now I've got this shape, and I've got that interior shape, and so one more shape before we start pathfinding. So I'm going to go ahead and create a circle, holding the Shift key down. And let's see if this is in fact a circle. Yep, it looks like a perfect circle. And then we're going to need a rectangle or something to either cut or whatever. So I'm just going to make a rectangle. And I'm just going to change those two so that I can see through. So now I've got everything that I need to create this thing. I've got the circle. I've got something to cut the circle out. I've got this shape. So let's go ahead and select everything. And then we're going to go to the path or the Shapebuilder tool. And I know I don't want this. So I'm going to hold the Option key down. Don't want that. Option key, don't want that. I really don't need this stuff, right? This outside shape, because this was just there to help me. Don't need this. I don't need this. And I don't want this. So let's hold the Option key down, and voila. And then I want these two pieces to be one single piece, right? So I'm not going to hold the Option key. I'm just going to drag across. And you can see I don't want to forget this little guy. Drag across. And there's a little bit more. So I'm going to remove this and remove this guy. So holding the Option key down here and this one down. And you can kind of see there's still some weird issues here. So let's get rid of that and a little bit of that. Just zooming. This is why it's so important to be able to use the space bar to zoom around. Get rid of that. These are like little artifacts that I hadn't noticed. So I'm going to actually put this inside of this. Let's see. And then there's just a little bit of issue. Oop. Command minus minus. A little bit of issue. Looks pretty good though, actually. I could simplify this if I wanted to. So here's where my issue is. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. And I'm just going to hold and then get that. That becomes part of that. Command 0 zeroes out. And then I'm going to zoom in one more time. I have a feeling if I had it on one side, I'd probably have it on the other. Nope, looks good. Okay, hopefully this helps. Just going to go back to my selection tool, select everything, and then change the fill. There we go. And that's what it looks like. And yeah, there's this little issue right here that I could probably have gotten rid of. And that would be something I would do in a different video. But otherwise, looks like it's pretty accurate. And again, we'll group both of these Command G together so that when we move them around, they get moved. And oh, here are the extra pieces of junk that I could just delete. And that's it. Hope this helped. For the first part of Shapebuilder, the Width tool and the use of the Rotate tool, as well as being able to expand a shape, and the path simplification. Okay,